Welcome to Macomb Paranormal Investigations and Research. Tonight, we descend beneath one of Michigan's most haunting locations. Hidden under the historic grounds of Traverse City's former Northern Michigan Asylum lies a maze of underground tunnels, dark brick passageways, once used by doctors, workers, patients, and perhaps something else. These are the Junction Insane Asylum Tunnels. Beneath the beautiful architecture and peaceful scenery of what is now known as the village at Grand Traverse Commons, there remains a chilling underground world where whispers echo through damp corridors, where shadows move without explanation, and where countless stories refuse to die. Tonight, we're diving deep into the history, the legends, the paranormal encounters, and the disturbing truths surrounding one of Michigan's creepiest hidden places. Turn down the lights, and let's step into the shadows. The story begins in the late 1800s. Michigan's population was rapidly growing, and mental institutions in Kalamazoo and Pontiac had become overcrowded. State officials wanted a third asylum to house the mentally ill of northern Michigan. In 1881, plans were approved for what would become the Northern Michigan Asylum in Traverse City. The location itself seemed almost peaceful. Rolling hills overlooking Grand Traverse Bay, open land surrounded by forests and fresh air. But behind the beauty was a grim reality. During the 1800s, mental illness was poorly understood. Many patients committed to asylums suffered from depression, trauma, epilepsy, addiction, dementia, developmental disorders, or simply behavior society considered unacceptable. Some patients were truly dangerous, others were simply different. The asylum officially opened in 1885 with only 43 patients, but over the decades, it expanded massively. The hospital followed the famous Kirkbride plan, a design philosophy believing architecture itself could heal the mentally ill. Large windows, beautiful gardens, fresh air, sunlight, and open spaces were all part of the treatment process. The hospital's superintendent, Dr. James Decker Munson, strongly believed in what he called beauty is therapy. Unlike many institutions of the era, restraints, such as straitjackets, were reportedly discouraged, and the grounds were filled with flowers, orchards, and scenic walkways. But even with humane intentions, darkness still found its way into the asylum. As the decades passed, the facility exploded in size. By the mid-1900s, thousands of patients lived on the sprawling campus. And beneath this massive psychiatric complex, workers constructed a hidden underground network. The tunnels, brick-lined passageways, stretched beneath the asylum grounds, connecting many of the buildings across the campus. These tunnels were not originally built for horror. They had practical purposes. Steam pipes carried heat throughout the facility during Michigan's brutal winters. Electrical lines and utilities ran underground. Staff used the tunnels to move supplies between buildings without exposure to snow or freezing temperatures. Some reports say patients also occasionally used the tunnels to move between wards and treatment buildings. Imagine that image for a moment. A psychiatric patient in the early 1900s walking through dim underground tunnels lit only by weak bulbs, hearing steam hiss through pipes overhead, surrounded by dripping walls and endless darkness. Even today, people who explore the tunnels describe an overwhelming feeling of dread. The ceilings are low in sections. Some corridors seem to stretch forever into darkness. Sounds echo, strangely, underground. Every footstep bounces off brick walls like someone following just behind you. And then there are the stories. Over the years, the tunnels became the center of local legends. Some urban explorers claimed the tunnels connected all the way into downtown Traverse City. Others believed there were hidden rooms beneath the asylum, used for experimental treatments or confinement. While historians say the downtown tunnel story is a myth, the legends never fully disappeared. The mystery only deepened after the hospital eventually declined. During the early 1900s, Psychiatry changed drastically. Treatments became more invasive. Across America, institutions experimented with hydrotherapy, electroshock treatments, insulin shock therapy, and lobotomies. While Traverse City State Hospital was once praised for humane care, it still existed within an era when mental health treatment often crossed frightening lines. By the 1940s and 1950s, reports indicate thousands of electroshock treatments had been performed at the hospital. Patients often disappeared into the system for years. Some died there, some never returned home. Families sometimes abandoned relatives entirely. The tunnels beneath the asylum silently witnessed it all. Workers transported supplies underground, while above them patients screamed through the night. Steam drifted through the passageways, while winter storms battered the buildings overhead. And as decades passed, the tunnels began collecting stories. Former employees reportedly spoke of hearing footsteps underground when no one else was present. Maintenance workers described doors slamming in empty corridors. Some claimed shadow figures moved quickly through the tunnels before vanishing around corners. Urban explorers who illegally entered the tunnels after the hospital closed reported hearing whispers echoing through the darkness. Others claimed they felt watched the entire time underground. Now, skeptics will argue there are perfectly logical explanations. Underground tunnels create strange acoustics. Steam pipes bang and groan. Echoes distort sounds. Darkness affects the human mind. But many who entered those tunnels insist something else is there. One of the creepiest aspects of the asylum's history is how isolated patients could become. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, mental illness carried enormous stigma. Once admitted to an asylum, some people rarely saw the outside world again. Imagine spending years inside those walls. Long hallways, locked wards, endless routines. Underground tunnels, carrying workers silently beneath your feet. Now imagine dying there. Forgotten. It's no surprise many paranormal investigators believe emotional trauma can leave an imprint on locations. And if that theory is true, the tunnels beneath the northern Michigan asylum may hold over a century of lingering energy. The hospital eventually changed names several times over the decades. It became known as Traverse City State Hospital, and later the Traverse City Regional Psychiatric Hospital. But by the late 20th century, large psychiatric institutions across America began shutting down. Public opinion changed. New medications emerged. Deinstitutionalization spread nationwide. The Traverse City Hospital slowly emptied. Buildings were abandoned. Hallways fell silent. But silence can be deceptive. When abandoned structures decay, they develop an eerie life of their own. Paint peels from walls like skin. Pipes groan underground. Wind whistles through broken windows. And in places filled with tragedy, imagination and fear can quickly turn into ghost stories. The tunnels became irresistible to trespassers and explorers. People snuck underground carrying flashlights and cameras, hoping to capture evidence of the paranormal. Some returned terrified. Others claimed they saw nothing at all. But certain stories kept repeating. Cold spots appearing suddenly in warm tunnel sections. Unexplained voices. The sensation of someone standing directly behind you. Shadow figures moving between intersections underground. And perhaps the most disturbing reports of people hearing screams. Some explorers described hearing what sounded like distant cries echoing through the tunnels late at night. By the time they investigated, nothing was there. Others claimed electronic equipment malfunctioned underground. Batteries drained unusually fast. Audio recordings captured whispers no one heard during filming. Again, skeptics point to underground interference, moisture, poor air quality, and acoustics. But paranormal investigators often see these same conditions repeatedly at haunted locations. The tunnels also carry psychological terror. Underground spaces naturally trigger fear in humans. There are no windows, limited exits, Darkness surrounds you. Sound behaves unnaturally. Every instinct tells your brain, you are vulnerable. Now combine that primal fear with the history of an old asylum. That's why the Junction Insane Asylum Tunnels continue drawing paranormal investigators from across Michigan. Even today, portions of the tunnel system remain preserved as part of historical tours at the village at Grand Traverse Commons. Visitors walk through sections of the old brick steam tunnels while guides explain the hospital's history. During evening tours, many guests report feeling uneasy underground. Some describe overwhelming sadness. Others feel sudden anxiety for no apparent reason. Paranormal groups who have investigated nearby areas claim to capture strange EVP recordings. For those unfamiliar, EVP stands for Electronic Voice Phenomena, unexplained voices captured on recording devices. Investigators have reported faint whispers, responses to direct questions, and strange sounds that appear to originate from nowhere. Whether these are paranormal events or simply audio contamination remains heavily debated. But the legends continue growing. One persistent story involves a shadow figure seen deep within one of the tunnel intersections. Witnesses describe a tall, dark silhouette standing motionless before disappearing instantly. Some believe it may be connected to a former patient. Others think it could simply be tricks of light and shadow caused by the curved tunnel walls. Another story involves feelings of nausea and panic experienced by visitors in specific tunnel sections. Paranormal researchers sometimes associate this with locations containing intense emotional residue. Skeptics argue low oxygen levels, mold, or claustrophobia could easily produce the same symptoms. And honestly, both possibilities are terrifying. Because whether paranormal or psychological, the fear is real. The hospital grounds themselves have also accumulated countless ghost stories over the decades. People report hearing footsteps in empty hallways. Some claim they've seen figures staring from windows of former patient wards. Others describe phantom voices calling their names. Many paranormal investigators are especially fascinated by Building 50, the asylum's original and most iconic structure. Massive, Gothic, and imposing, it dominates the property like something from a nightmare. Even restored and renovated, parts of the building still carry an unsettling atmosphere. And below it, the tunnels remain. One detail often overlooked is how advanced the asylum's underground infrastructure actually was for the late 1800s. The tunnel system was part of a self-sustaining campus, complete with power generation, heating systems, farms, and workshops. It functioned almost like its own underground city. That scale only adds to the mystery. Because when places become that large, stories inevitably emerge. Hidden rooms, sealed corridors, forgotten storage areas, locked doors no one remembers opening. Urban legends claim some tunnel sections remain inaccessible today. Some say entire portions were sealed off decades ago. Others believe records about certain underground areas disappeared entirely. No solid evidence confirms these stories, but mystery thrives where information is incomplete. And abandoned psychiatric hospitals have always inspired fear. Part of that fear comes from history itself. Society once hid away the mentally ill behind locked walls. Conditions in many institutions across America became horrific. Though Traverse City's asylum originally promoted compassionate treatment, overcrowding and changing medical practices inevitably altered life there over time. Thousands of people passed through those buildings, thousands of lives filled with suffering, hope, fear, confusion, and loneliness. That emotional weight never fully disappears. Paranormal investigators often talk about residual hauntings, the idea that intense emotions somehow imprint themselves onto locations like recordings trapped in time. If residual hauntings exist anywhere, old hospitals and asylums would seem likely candidates. And underground tunnels may amplify that feeling even more. Enclosed spaces hold sound differently. Darkness isolates the mind. Every tiny noise feels personal. You begin noticing your own breathing, your own heartbeat, and eventually you start wondering if the footsteps echoing behind you are truly yours at all. One chilling aspect repeatedly mentioned by explorers involves disorientation underground. Some claim tunnel intersections feel strangely confusing, even with maps. Others say certain sections seem colder than they should be. Paranormal believers point toward supernatural energy. Skeptics point toward underground drafts and psychological suggestion. But either way, the atmosphere is undeniably creepy. Photographs of the tunnels reveal long brick corridors vanishing into darkness. Rusted pipes snake across ceilings. Condensation drips from ancient walls. In some images, the tunnels look less like maintenance corridors and more like entrances to another world. And maybe that's why the location fascinates so many people. The Junction Insane Asylum Tunnels represent more than just a haunted place. They symbolize forgotten history buried beneath modern life. Above ground, tourists shop, dine, and walk beautifully restored grounds. But below them remains a hidden reminder of the past, a reminder of the thousands who lived and sometimes died inside the asylum, a reminder of how mental illness was once treated, and perhaps a reminder that some stories never truly end. Today, preservation efforts have transformed much of the former hospital into businesses, residences, restaurants, and historical attractions. But no amount of renovation can erase history, because history leaves echoes, especially underground. Paranormal investigators who visit the tunnels often describe a strange contradiction. The location feels historically beautiful, yet emotionally heavy. Some investigators say they experience sudden sadness while underground. Others report overwhelming pressure or anxiety that vanishes once outside. Could this simply be the power of suggestion? Absolutely. But if locations can somehow retain emotional energy, then the tunnels beneath the northern Michigan asylum may still carry fragments of every person who walked them. The lonely patient escorted underground in silence. The exhausted nurse rushing between buildings during winter storms. The maintenance worker hearing strange noises in the darkness. The frightened soul who never left the asylum alive. Perhaps their stories still linger beneath Traverse City. And maybe that's why so many visitors continue searching those tunnels for answers. Not just for ghosts, but for connection to a forgotten past. As always, here at Macomb Paranormal Investigations and Research, we approach these stories with both curiosity and respect. Mental illness is not horror. The true horror often came from misunderstanding, isolation, and the treatment methods of earlier generations. Still, places shaped by intense human emotion often become magnets for paranormal legends, and few places in Michigan carry as much emotional history as the old northern Michigan asylum and its underground tunnels. So, the next time you visit Traverse City, remember this. Beneath the shops, restaurants, and restored buildings of the Grand Traverse Commons, there are tunnels. Dark tunnels built in the 1800s. Tunnels that once carried heat, electricity, workers, and, perhaps, forgotten secrets. And if you ever find yourself walking those underground corridors late at night, listening to water drip from ancient brick walls, hearing distant echoes somewhere ahead in the darkness, you may begin to wonder, are you truly alone down there? Thank you for joining us tonight on Macomb Paranormal Investigations and Research. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the podcast. And remember, always look into the shadows, because sometimes the shadows look back.